There were 18 candles on my birthday cake. The name piped across the top wasn't mine. That same night, my parents handed my brother the keys to a brand new truck, and they handed me a lecture about responsibility. It had 3 parts. I counted. I smiled through all of it because in our house a daughter who smiled was furniture, and furniture doesn't cause scenes. Before sunrise I was gone. 1 gray hoodie, $60, and a bus ticket out of my own life. 2 weeks later my father called me in tears. Please, he said. Just come home. It took me 7 years to learn what those tears were actually for. When I finally did, I drove back to that town with a folder on the seat beside me, and I closed a story 3 generations older than I was. My name is Nora Hayes. I'm 31. I work nights in an emergency room in Columbus. People ask why a nurse keeps receipts for everything: grocery runs, parking stubs, a text message from years ago. I tell them it's a work habit. That's half true. The whole truth starts in a town called Millbrook Falls. Population 4,000. 2 stoplights, 1 church with good pie and long memories. On Main Street stood a brick building with gold letters on the window. Bennett & Son Hardware, established 1954. My great-grandfather painted those letters before my father was born. Notice anything about them? The sign never said daughter. It said son singular, like a law of nature. My grandfather ran that store. Then my father, Richard Bennett, ran it. My younger brother Andrew was going to run it someday, and everyone knew that before he could walk. Me, I stocked its shelves for free every summer of my childhood. I priced washers and swept the same oak floor my father had swept at my age. In that store I learned to count everything: inventory, hours, the number of times my name got said out loud in a day. Small numbers mostly. I didn't know yet that counting would save my life later. I was 10, standing on a milk crate with a sticker gun pricing drawer pulls. Andrew was 8, sitting on the counter eating a push pop while our father showed him how the register opened. He's learning the business, Dad said. I asked if I could learn it too. He didn't look up. You're doing fine where you are. The chore chart on our refrigerator had 1 name on it. Mine. My mother, Karen, kept the store's books unpaid for 30 years. You'd think she'd have noticed the math of that. Instead, she enforced it. Nora, your brother needs quiet to study. Nora, take the small bedroom. Andrew needs space for his weights. I want to be fair. Nobody hit me. Nobody starved me. What they did was quieter and slower, and it took me years to find a word for it. When I was 12, a customer asked my father if his kids would take over the store. He clapped Andrew on the shoulder. My boy's going to run this place. Then he nodded at me, mop in hand. The girl, she's good help. The customer laughed. My father laughed. I kept mopping. Senior year, I found the thing I actually wanted. A hospital field trip. A nurse who let me watch her start in 4. I came home glowing and said the word nursing at dinner, brochure in hand, math already done on notepaper. I could cover half the costs myself if they helped with the rest. My father wiped his mouth and gave me the speech I could recite in my sleep. Money doesn't grow on trees, Nora. This family doesn't hand out free rides. Andrew was 16 and had never worked a single shift anywhere. That same month, I walked into the kitchen and found my parents at the table with a man from a car dealership, all of them smiling over paperwork. My mother flipped the folder shut the second she saw me, like I'd caught her stealing. I figured it was store business. Remember that folder. Comes back. That spring, an envelope came addressed to me, my full legal name, from a bank in Columbus I'd never heard of. I was 17. I asked my mother what it was. She took it out of my hands as easily as taking a knife from a toddler. Junk mail, honey. They send those to everybody. Then she tucked it into her apron pocket and started talking about the weather. Remember that envelope too. Comes back. I turned 18 on a Friday, 2 weeks after graduation. I baked a coffee cake that morning because that was our tradition. I baked on birthdays, including my own. My mother kissed the air near my head and said, "Big dinner tonight, sweetheart. Whole family's coming. Wear something nice." I ironed a dress. 18 years of evidence, and I still thought maybe this once the table was set for me. At noon, my grandmother called. Margaret Bennett was the only person in that family who said my name like it meant somebody. She'd owned the building the store sat in since my grandfather died. A detail nobody thought about except her. She didn't sing happy birthday. She said, "You're 18 today. That number matters more than they think. Whatever happens tonight, call me after." I laughed and asked what could possibly happen at a birthday dinner. She didn't laugh back. The relatives came at 6. There was a strange energy in the driveway. People grinning over my head at a shape under a blue tarp everyone pretended not to see. After dinner, my father stood, tapped his glass, and walked us all outside. He pulled the tarp off a brand new pickup truck and tossed the keys to my 16-year-old brother. Andrew screamed. Everyone clapped. My father gave the longest speech I'd heard from him in years about the Bennett name, about a man needing a truck he could count on. "This family invests in its future," he said. I stood on the porch steps in my iron dress and applauded my brother's truck. Then my mother carried out the cake. White frosting, blue trim, 18 candles already lit. She set it down in front of both of us, and that's when I read the icing. "Congratulations, Andrew." My mother caught me looking and smiled the way you smile at a slow child. "One cake covers both occasions, Nora. Don't be dramatic." The candles were for me. The cake was for him. I laughed along with everyone so I wouldn't cry, and I blew out my own candles on my brother's cake. Afterward, my father found me by the porch rail. "Now that you're 18, we need to talk about responsibility," he said, and gave me a lecture in 3 parts while Andrew revved his new engine in the background. Responsibility. Gratitude. Family. Family means nobody keeps score, Nora. He said that with a straight face at a party where the scoreboard was parked in the driveway with a bow on it. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Monday morning, you'll come by First Millbrook Bank with me. There's grown-up paperwork to square away. Bank stuff. Keep that phrase where you can reach it." I washed dishes for 40 people alone that night while everyone said goodbye to Andrew. 2/3 of his cake sat under plastic wrap on the counter, my candle holes still in the icing like little graves. Something in me went very quiet. Upstairs, I packed like I was going to a sleepover. One hoodie, my birth certificate, my social security card, my diploma. $60 I'd hidden in a tampon box for 2 years, the one place nobody in that house would ever look. I didn't leave a note. A note is for people who will wonder. At 4 in the morning, I walked past the truck with its ribbon drooping in the dew, down to the gas station where the bus stopped. The ticket to Columbus cost $28. I didn't look out the window. Columbus at 7 in the morning is loud and completely uninterested in you, which was exactly what I needed. I spent the first night in the bus station, spine against the wall, backpack strap wrapped twice around my wrist. In the morning, a woman at an information desk slid me a flyer for a drop-in center, which led to a shelter that took 18 to 21-year-olds, a bunk, a locker, and a caseworker who kept butterscotch in her desk. On day 3, I called the only number I'd written down. My grandmother picked up on the second ring, like she'd been sitting by it. "I'm safe," I told her. "Don't tell them where." I could hear her breathing, steady as a clock. "I won't," she said. Then before she hung up, "For the record, child, you should have had your own cake." By the end of that week I had a job, Earl's Diner, dish pit to start, then the counter within a month. The work was hot water and burned forearms and quarters counted into a coffee can, and I was good at it because I'd been trained my whole childhood to serve people and stay invisible while doing it. 90 miles away. Nobody noticed I was gone until Sunday. 2 full days. My mother's first call wasn't to the police. It was to my grandmother, and her first question wasn't whether I was alive. It was, did she say anything about Monday? 14 days after my birthday, my phone lit up on the diner counter. My father, a man I had never once heard cry, was crying. "Nora, please just come home. Your mother's sick over this. We did wrong by you, sweetheart." 18 years, and I could count his endearments on one hand. Here they came pouring out like a jackpot. My eyes went hot. I heard myself start to say okay. Then, underneath his crying, I heard my mother's voice in the background, low and impatient. She didn't know I could hear her. "Just get her home first. The paperwork can wait till she's here." I hung up, wiped my hands on my apron, and refilled 4 coffees without spilling a drop. That night my grandmother sent me one line. "Don't come back for them. If you ever come back for you." I gave myself one night to fall apart. Just one. Then I flipped over a napkin and wrote a plan in pen. Shelter, work, ID, prerequisites, nursing program RN. 7 years if it had to be 7 years. What I didn't know yet was that the paperwork my mother mentioned wasn't about me coming home at all. It was about a signature. And it would take years, a stranger's kindness, and one line on a bank statement before I understood exactly what my family had already done with my name, 3 days before that cake was ever cut. The financial aid office at Columbus State taught me my first lesson about paper. 18 and employed, I still didn't exist to the federal government without my parents' signatures. When I called home for their tax forms, my mother's sweetness cooled instantly. That's family financial information, Nora. You walked out on this family. Doors swing both ways. Click. So I paid retail for my own future, 1 class a semester, cash at the register, while a different version of me was being built back home. My mother told the church and the grocery line that I'd run off with some boy. Ungrateful. Wild. My grandmother mailed me the church bulletin's prayer list. Please pray for the Bennett family and for Nora, wherever she has wandered. Wandered like I was livestock that slipped a fence. I did nothing about it. You cannot outtalk people who own the microphone. Let them have the story, my grandmother said. Stories wear out. Paper doesn't. I made a friend, Brooke, who waitressed weekends and split rent with me on a real apartment once I'd saved enough. At 20, the leasing manager pulled me aside after running my credit. Miss Hayes, there's an issue. I told him I'd never had a credit card in my life. He turned the monitor a few degrees toward me. You've got a whole adult's credit history here. That night I pulled my own report for the first time. For accounts. 2 credit cards, a store card, a personal line of credit at First Millbrook Bank, the bank with the lollipops, the one my father had wanted to take me to that Monday. Combined balance with interest and fees, $23,000. The oldest account opened in October, the year I was 16. I thought about the envelope at 17. Junk mail, honey. I thought about every lecture on money my father had ever given me while my name was out working for him at 22% interest. The fraud department walked me through it like a recipe. To dispute it, I'd need a police report and a federal identity theft affidavit. A sworn document with a line where I'd have to name the person who used my information. Most young people in your situation never file, the woman told me. Because in cases like yours, honey, the name on that line is usually a parent. Called home once more clinically. My mother did a lazy loop of denial. Banks make errors, households share expenses. Then my father took the phone. And there was no confusion in him at all. Family money is family money, Nora. You'd have wasted it on yourself anyway. Something that lasts. I told him what the bank required. The patience went out of him like a pulled plug. You file that report and you have no family. You hear me? None. Thank you for your time, I said. It's the waitress in me. My grandmother rode 90 miles on a church van to see me not long after, carrying pie like a diplomatic pouch. She listened to everything without a flicker of surprise. Your father learned this somewhere, child, she said quietly, and would say no more. Then she put $200 on my table. Worn 20s, tell her neat. It's not charity, Nora. It's back pay. The affidavit sat on my counter for 3 weeks like a diagnosis I wouldn't read. What finally moved my hand was a dying patient who told me about a brother who'd cheated him out of a farm 40 years earlier. His voice still shaking. Honey, don't you wait on people to see you. Waiting is how they win. Before I signed anything, I asked the bank for every statement, every transaction. I read them at my kitchen table with a highlighter. A habit I'd learned from a charge nurse named Rebecca who once told me, if it's not written down, it never happened. Groceries. My brother's dentist. A sporting goods purchase sized extra large, which was not my size. And then June, 3 days before my 18th birthday. A cash advance, $4,800 at a car dealership. The down payment on my brother's truck had come off a card carrying my name. I hadn't just been forgotten on my birthday. I'd financed it. I signed the affidavit in the rain at a police substation on my way to a shift. My signature came out steadier than it looks on my mortgage now. I folded a copy of that statement page, line 41 I started calling it, into quarters and put it behind my nursing badge. It's still there today. The fallout came in layers. A voicemail from my mother that curdled from sweetness into the word ungrateful. A text from my brother, 18 by then. Why are you doing this to Dad? Whatever they took will pay you back someday. I never answered him. What do you tell the boy who got the truck and never knew the rest? It took 18 months of disputes before the fraudulent accounts came off my credit for good. The week my score cleared, I sat in that same financial aid office and watched the numbers run green, student loans in my own name by my own choice. I have never been so grateful for debt in my life. I finished nursing school 4 years after I left home. 23 years old. The day before my pinning ceremony, an arrangement of white roses arrived at my nurse's station. The card read, "We are so proud of you, honey. We always knew you had it in you. Mom and Dad." For years of silence and now this. I put the roses in water. I wish I could tell you I threw them out. They came to the ceremony in their church clothes. My mother cried on cue. My father shook hands and said we always knew she had it in her. The same sentence from the card because good marketing repeats. My grandmother sat between us like a checkpoint, purse in her lap. Watch what they ask for next, she told me afterward. I told her she was being dark. The calls started weekly after that. Warm, easy, never mentioning the 6 missing years. Repackaged now as all that unpleasantness. In October came the ask, soft as a slipper. Come home for Christmas, Nora. I went on my own terms, dinner only, sleeping at my grandmother's house on Cedar Street. At the table, with the pie plate still out, my mother produced a manila folder. Just some bank stuff, honey. Inside was a letter to the bank claiming my affidavit had been a family misunderstanding, and beneath it, a new consolidation loan with my signature line flagged in red. I'll read it tonight, I said, and smiled and took it with me. At my grandmother's table, I laid out the dates. The bank's refinance application on the store's line of credit was filed in May. The roses arrived 3 weeks later. The pinning invitation nobody outside my grandmother should have known about. Christmas the week after. The store was drowning under a big box competitor, and First Millbrook wouldn't refinance around a live fraud record with my father's name on it. They hadn't wanted their daughter back. They wanted my signature. I drove to their house Christmas morning and set the unsigned folder on the counter. I'm not signing. The affidavit is true. My mother's church voice dropped like a coat off a hook. You were always cold, Nora. My father said nothing at all. He walked to the garage and started the compressor. That was his whole contribution. My brother followed me to my car. You could just sign it, Nora. Just paper. Standing in that driveway, I finally understood the real difference between us. He'd been taught paper didn't matter because his name was already on everything. I knew paper was the only thing that mattered because mine had been taken. Back at Cedar Street, my grandmother had tea waiting, and she told me about Eleanor. Eleanor was my father's older sister. In 1983, my grandfather had emptied the savings account meant for her dental hygiene certificate to cover a bad season at the store. She confronted him in front of customers and left town 3 weeks later. The family told everyone she'd run off with the trucker. My father, 17 at the time, watched all of it, what it cost to leave and what it paid to stay. Eleanor wrote home for years. My grandfather returned every letter unopened. Eleanor died in Arizona in 2009. My grandmother went to the funeral alone and told the church she was visiting a cousin. The night you left, my grandmother told me, I called your father myself. I told him to make it right or the building goes back to me. Those tears on the phone were real, honey. They just weren't for you. She showed me the deed to the building, her name alone since my grandfather died, and told me that when she was gone, I'd be in her will by name as exactly what I was. Her granddaughter. My grandmother died in March 4 years later. In a hospital bed I refused to leave. Her obituary, printed by my father, listed her survivors as her son and her grandson. My name wasn't in it. Neither was Eleanor's. I read it twice at a gas station counter and understood exactly how the pattern worked. First they take you off the paper. 3 weeks later a friend sent me a photo of a legal notice buried in the county paper, probate proceedings on my grandmother's estate, naming me as an heir whose whereabouts could not, with reasonable diligence, be ascertained, filed by my father as executor. I had lived at the same address for years. They'd sent me a Christmas card there in the very year they needed my signature. I had 2 days before the response deadline. I didn't call and scream. I built a file, the same way I chart a patient, tabbed and labeled for a stranger to understand. My ID and address history, the Christmas envelope in my mother's handwriting, my identity theft affidavit and police report, and 11 letters I later found in my grandmother's cedar box, each one addressed to me at my parents' house, each one stamped return to sender in my mother's own hand. I filed my appearance in 11 minutes at the county courthouse. The clerk compared my license to the notice and said, "Well, you look found to me." I read my grandmother's will in a numbered folder at a wooden table. To my granddaughter, Nora Ruth Hayes of Columbus, Ohio, I give the commercial building at 114 Main Street, together with all rents and my keepsake box, which she knows. Everything with your name on it is yours, child. See that your name is on the right things. My father found me in the courthouse hallway the day before the hearing. "You'd take the store from your own family," he said. "No hello." I told him the building had never been his. That night he showed up at my apartment, hat in his hands, crying for the second time in my life. "Come home, Nora. We'll put your name on the store. All you'd have to do is step back from the will and sign one letter clearing up that old business with the bank." I made him coffee. I want that on the record. Then I set a lease agreement on the table instead. The store stays, he stays, market rent, first month free, my name on the deed where the truth could finally live in the open. No signatures about the past. Just rent on the first, the way it had always been paid to my grandmother. He stood so fast the chair barked against the tile. "I'm not going to rent my own life from a girl." At the door he told me I was no Bennett. I told him he'd taught me that family money was family money. Turns out I was the family. The money was me. The hearing itself lasted the length of a coffee break. The judge looked at the return to sender envelopes, the Christmas card, the affidavit, and asked my father's attorney how a man could swear his own daughter couldn't be located when he'd mailed her mail. Notice by publication, she ruled, had been improvidently granted. My father was removed as executor before lunch. 3 weeks later I signed a recorded deed with my full name on the grantee line. The first signature of my life that didn't cost me anything. My father never signed the lease. He'd rather lose the store than pay rent to me. That February, 71 years after my great-grandfather painted the window, Bennett & Son Hardware closed for good. I mailed him one thing afterward, no note. A postcard from my grandmother's cedar box, a desert sunset, postmarked 1984, addressed to no one who ever answered. The twin of one he still kept under his own cash drawer. I hired painters that summer. Under the fresh coat, the ghost of the old gold letters still shows through in the right light. I told them to leave it. History doesn't need erasing. That was always their move, and look where it got them. 2 sisters signed the first lease that July. A bakery sourdough that causes traffic on Main Street. I gave them the same low rent my grandmother once gave my father because it was never about profit. It was about the record. My mother sent a birthday card this June. No apology, no mention of a single fact. Just thinking of you on your day. I filed it in the cedar box with the other 11. Not answered. Just kept, the way my grandmother kept everything, in case it's ever worth opening. This past birthday, my kitchen filled with the people who actually showed up for me over the years. There was a cake, white frosting, blue trim, the same pattern I once blew my candles out on for someone else. But this time across the top, in letters so big they crowded the edges. My name all the way across, embarrassing the frosting. Here is what I know now that I didn't know at 18. Nobody is coming to hand you your place in this world. The people who are supposed to save you a seat will sell it to keep an old sign lit. So you build your own table, you put your name on it in writing, and you let that finally be the record.